So Sherlock Holmes has officially arrived in Moriarty the Patriot, and with it brings someone who can actually match Moriarty's intellect and give him a challenge unlike any other. And this is the episode that really turns the series on its head. Up until now, there has been no real struggle for Moriarty. When he sees someone that he deems to be not fit to be in this earth, he takes care of them. He gives justice to those who have been wronged and makes sure that change is brought about, even if it's for a single father or just a small group of people, a family, things like that. But this is the episode that not only introduces Sherlock and gives him an intellectual counterpart, someone who can actually rival his intelligence. It also changes the plan and the formation of what it is to bring about change. And the biggest way to get change is through death. Because once death hits the streets, once the people see what's behind the curtain, no longer hiding these so-called crimes and exposing the just intolerance and the disgusting injustice of the world, the people will rise up and there will be chaos, there will be violence, but in that violence will bring about the change. It definitely falls into the category of does the end justify the means, and tons of great shows use that exact formula. You have Death Note, you have Code Geass, and while generally shows that fall under that Death Note or Code Geass banner, they usually follow a pretty similar, like, okay, a person taking on all the evil to bring about change. I honestly feel like Moriarty the Patriot is technically in that same vein, but is doing so in such an interesting way, especially considering by putting the focus on Moriarty rather than Sherlock, you're not really seeing things as just here's a psychopathic villain who's killing people for fun. Rather, he's saying, if innocents do die to bring about that change, that is just the price we have to pay for a better tomorrow. And that's the exact same way characters like Light or Lelouch from Geass or even Death Note perceive the things, where they understand that they will become the villain for a better tomorrow. And there's always the people who agree with those or disagree with those thought processes, and it's basically it comes down to the question. If there was a train coming on two different railroad tracks, if you could save one or you could save two, which one would you choose? Most people would say the second, but it gets more complex the more and more people it goes on, so it comes a point where, what do you look at that end scene as? Do you look at it as, of course, Moriarty manipulated a situation and got an innocent man killed. He didn't take precautions, and now a good person who was just doing his duty is now dead and stabbed to death. Do you view that as Moriarty made a big mistake, or will this be a better way for Moriarty to expose the intolerance and injustice of the noble society? It's one of those things where it's not an easy to swallow pill that you can give a one answer kind of solves everything. And that's what makes it so compelling to me. And that's why those are my favorite types of anime, above all else. If you ask me what's my favorite anime genre, it's rom-coms. It sounds funny to say, oh, Brandon likes rom-coms, but then he's talking about all this like morally questionable things. I like all sorts of anime, but if my general go-to genre, rom-coms. But if there's a specific style of show that I love above all else, it's the idea of the end justifying the means and what a character does to basically follow through with that just kind of like logical sense of their minds and trying to figure out what they're doing is either correct or incorrect. That's why Geass or Death Note or even Moriarty the Patriot are some of my favorites that I see in the anime medium. What's very interesting to me is this is going to be such a chaos, bloodbath, insanity run that I don't know where we're gonna go. Sherlock Holmes himself is someone who definitely surprised me, not to the extent that he's completely different than anything I've ever seen. Obviously, he definitely could be the more I watch of him. He definitely reminds me of a few iterations that I've seen, but there does feel like there's a uniqueness to his presence, and it's interesting how you get introduced to him in this almost Playboy fashion where women are following at his heels saying, oh my god, predict this person, and then he predicts that Moriarty is a mathematician. And this was a really good way to introduce him, I have to say. Not only does it give you the sense of charisma that he's not this like super cool, calm, and collected, gives no shits, has no emotion, doesn't care about ladies. He definitely has a playboy persona. You can tell he can take care of himself in a handy game of fisticuffs, but at the same time, he also has that same level of intellect that someone like Moriarty does. Maybe Moriarty can't fight the same way, but he has people who can do so for him. And the way he deducted that he was a mathematician actually was easy to follow. I knew exactly how he was going to deduct that as soon as I saw Moriarty take a step back and look at the case. I just didn't know what the girls were doing at first. It's like, oh yeah, because we know how he is. He's very collected. He's probably wondering how that was even made, seeing how it's all connected. So the way he deducted that, I actually really liked that. It was easy to follow. The thing is Moriarty actually kind of was the one pulling things from thin air. And I've mentioned it a couple times in these reviews. The thing that makes or breaks a show in the Sherlock Holmes banner is if the character randomly solves things. That's why I'm not a fan of the BBC Sherlock. because that character just randomly picks things from thin air, literally is directed to be picking things from thin air, and that's how he solves the crime. Sherlock actually deducted and followed the clues, similar to how Moriarty did in episode 1. Moriarty, on the other hand, I kind of felt like he just randomly picked things that the viewers couldn't predict. If we had no knowledge of who Sherlock Holmes was, there's no way we would have been able to pick out like stuff like that, and even like the violin and things like that. So it did feel a little more contrived in that sense, but it was nice because we know how he thinks, so we know he is just as intelligent and can piece together the clues. So to me, it's not an issue as long as going forward after their introduction, neither one of them randomly kind of pulls like, oh, you know, you slipped on a banana peel 2 days ago, so that's why I smelt the banana, and clearly, you know, the person was killed by a banana or something stupid like that. I don't think they're going to go that route, especially considering how they introduced Sherlock, so I got really high hopes. It'll be interesting because now that we're not really hiding these crimes and actually trying to expose it to the world, now it kind of makes sense why Sherlock would get on Moriarty's tail, especially considering there's going to be a lot of shit happening on this ship, and the only one that he's probably going to interact with on the ship that kind of gives him a kind of questionable persona of like, I wonder, is he smart enough that he would go to this length, and depending on how he's talking, I think they're going to both know the other is their greatest threat, but have no way to definitively prove it, and that's going to provide for a lot of interesting struggles going forward. I just think this episode was easily the best, not because Sherlock was introduced, but rather it kind of shakes up. We had 5 episodes to get accustomed to what the show is, the characters' personalities, the fact that they're willing to die for the cause. And now that we have Sherlock introduced, and now that we're kind of like playing in a different league, we're now saying it's time to bring about change. There will be bloodshed. There will be a lot of things happening, but this bloodshed will bring about the desired change and to crush the nobility. There's always going to be those people that will kind of like look at certain things and really paint it as black or white, and they'll say, okay, you know, the reason this bloodshed happened was because Moriarty edged him on. But that's the same excuse, in my opinion, as saying the only reason a husband beat his wife was because he was drunk. That was always in their veins. A drunk man's words are a man's true thoughts when he's sober. This is a man who literally had hunting grounds and killed people for fun. Just because he normally wouldn't do it on a ship full of people doesn't mean he couldn't do it. So he's just exposing his true feelings and thoughts. And yes, it did get someone killed, but to argue that it only happened because of Moriarty, if anything, Moriarty, you can argue, yeah, one person died, but clearly this person is now going to be punished and won't be able to kill more people in the future. So is that one person's death more justified than having 12 or even more people down the line not die because he's dead, or vice versa? It's not an easy to swallow pill, and that's why I always really encourage people who watch shows like these, rather than saying Moriarty's right or Moriarty's wrong, put it in the middle. And when you put it in the middle and you view things from both angles, that's when these shows take off, because you see things from every perspective and there's not a clear-cut answer. And that's what makes things like Sherlock Holmes, especially in this type of style, so damn compelling. Easily the best episode, most compelling, most interesting, the 2 new characters just really kind of like butting heads, the new Sherlock, the new Moriarty. This is taking off and I love it. Let me know your thoughts and feelings down below. What did you think? And where do you think it's going to go next week with the dead body and Moriarty saying, ho ho, what do we have here? If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, share, support, and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.